Who will win every NFL division this 2024 NFL season? What's going on, football fans? It's Mitch here, back with another BLV NFL prediction video. And in this video, I predict the winner of each and every NFL division for the 2024 NFL season. Moving from the NFC to the AFC, the West to the East, I will pick the winner of each division. And unfortunately, this is not a prediction video. This is a spoiler video. So if you're prepared to be spoiled, spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more NFL predictions / spoilers just like this. And let me know in the comments your opinion. Let me know your prediction for each and every division winner for this 2024 NFL season. Let's get to it, guys. Spike the like button. Don't forget, subscribe, because I will be coming out with my complete predictions for the entire NFL season, including my Super Bowl pick for the 2024-2025 NFL season. So let's start. We're going to move from the West to the East in this video because I think it's just a little bit more interesting. So let's begin with who will win the NFC West. The NFC West champion will be who? Now, I do not think it will be the Cardinals. We're just going to eliminate them right off the bat. The Cardinals do have Kyler Murray, a pretty fun quarterback. They do have Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, Greg Dortch, right? Michael Wilson, a receiving core that I'm excited for. An offensive line that I think with Paris Johnson moving from right to left in his second year, the moves that they made with Jonah Williams on the offensive line, I think they'll be able to run the ball well. Kyler Murray will make plays scrambling. Kyler Murray will make ad-lib plays. He'll make some special plays. But the problem with the Cardinals is they don't have a defense. The Cardinals' defense is putrid. They can't defend, and I don't think they have a pass rush. I think they have a limited secondary. I don't mind their safeties. I don't mind their linebackers. I think the middle of their defense is fine. I just think when it comes to slowing down the run game, they haven't really improved that area. I think when it comes to their pure pass rush, they might have the worst in the NFL. So, yeah, like Gannon enters year 2. Can he do some exciting things and improve this team? I definitely think they'll be better than last year. I think their record will be improved. I think they'll be a better team. Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyler being healthy. Those things matter to me. But I just don't think this is a well-rounded, complete football team. I'd be genuinely surprised if they made the playoffs out of this division. You've got the Seattle Seahawks, who I think are a good football team. I think have a lot of upside this year. I think are in the dark horse category, but I don't necessarily see them winning this division unless their offensive line drastically improves. Kenneth Walker has a breakout season. Geno Smith plays like he did in 2022 and not 2023. And their defense moves from one of the worst in the league by the end of last year to one of the best in the league by the end of this year, which is a lot to ask from any coach, including Mike Macdonald. I do think that the new offensive coordinator in Grubb is intriguing and exciting, and there's something to get excited about with Jackson Smith and Jigba in year 2, with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Kenneth Walker, Noah Fant. They've got plenty of skill talent, including the lovable Jake Bobo. But I do think that the Seahawks' questions on the offensive line, a little bit of a question at quarterback to a certain degree. I am a Geno fan, but many people are not. So I can understand where Sam Howell, if this team is not playing well at a certain point, he might enter the conversation, and there might be pressure there from the outside and from the fan base. That's entirely possible. But I do think the defense is going to stand tall. I do think the defense is really going to improve under the leadership of Mike Macdonald. His scheme is going to elevate their entire defense, their pass rush. I think their pass rush is going to be drastically better. I think they will play a lot of 2 safety coverages and a lot of 2 safety shells, which I think will allow them to give up the run. But I think they're going to be very good against the pass with Reek Woolen and with Witherspoon at corner, with Julian Love at safety, with the linebackers that they have in Baker and Dodson. I'm excited for. And I do think that they have one of the best interior defensive lines in football. So I view this team as a borderline playoff team, if not a wild card contender, but I do not think they have the complete overall team or the quarterback play completely trustworthy enough to win this division with a consistent performance, especially with a new coach against 2 of the best coaches in the league, which is Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. So that narrows it down from the Rams and the 49ers, right? So you got the Rams and you got the 49ers, two teams that are talented, two teams with great offenses. And I think the argument for the Rams would be, if their offense can really play at peak powers for the entire year, if the Rams offense can look the way it did down the stretch last year for an entire season, they have a chance to compete with anybody in the NFL. And if their defense can take some strides forward due to their youth, then perhaps they could compete with the 49ers for this division. They do have to stay healthy, but in the peak situation, you would assume that Cooper Kupp is playing closer to how he played in 2022 before he got injured, or 2021. And then you still have Puka Nacua, who's coming off one of the best, if not the best, rookie season we've ever seen. You've got Kyren Williams, a top 10 running back, if not a top 5. You've got Sean McVay calling the plays. You've got an improved offensive line, and you've got a youthful defense that many of these players could take strides, including an improved secondary. So there's many aspects that you could say, okay, you can buy into the Rams. I think for me, the area I'm concerned about the most is just the defense in general. Without Aaron Donald, I don't think there's a superstar on this defense at any level. I really like Ernest Jones. I think he's the best player on this defense. I like some of their players like Darius Williams, like Cameron Curl, like Kobe Turner, like Young. I like some of their players, but I don't love the entire product. The fact that they lost Raheem Morris, the fact that they lost Aaron Donald, the fact that they are counting on some veterans to come back healthy like Tre'Davious White scares me a little bit. I think their defense will be up and down and all around. I think it will be inconsistent, but I do think they'll win quite a few shootouts. They will be able to outpace teams on the scoreboard as long as their skill positions are healthy. Tyler Higbee should come back at some point later in the year, I would assume, but Kobe Parkinson should hold it down at tight end. I think he could surpass him by the end of the year, but I do think that they have enough at receiver, definitely. I think Demarcus Robinson's a quality number 3. I really like Puka and Cooper if they're healthy, and I think Stafford's still legit. He's still elite if he's healthy. McVay's also a brilliant coach and a great leader, so this team should kind of float and flirt with 10-ish type of wins. They might compete for the division. I just don't think they have the same amount of talent or cohesion or passion that the Niners do. I have the Niners winning this division. The San Francisco 49ers will win the NFC West. The reason for that is I think they're by far, pretty decisively, the most talented roster in the division. I also think that they have the best coach in the division, and I also feel like they've made many improvements. Now, the Niners are having to deal with a Super Bowl hangover, the depression of losing a Super Bowl, right? And also just the vibes of typical teams that lose the Super Bowl, they have to overcome it. Now, I will say this, because a lot of people have been saying that in my comments when kind of trying to discuss the 49ers in a negative fashion. A lot of people are trying to poo-poo my take of the 49ers, right? But to me, how many teams that win a conference championship barely lose any players, if none? Right? Like the Niners basically only lost Eric Armstead. That was pretty much the only, thinking, like the only guy that really mattered that they lost. And then you kind of say, well, they did replace him with Malik Collins, who is more consistently available and on the field. If you want to include Chase Young as a loss, they already replaced him with Leonard Floyd. That might be an upgrade. So you look at this team and what they've been able to do. They kept together probably the most talented roster in the NFL with one of the best coaches, and they've addressed the defensive coordinator position, which honestly almost cost them in numerous playoff games, but certainly cost them by the end of the Super Bowl. I thought that Steve Wilkes was never a fit for this defense or this personnel, and he got exposed in the biggest game of the year. So that certainly, I think, is going to be an important part of this team. Can the new defensive coordinator, can Sorensen step up, in terms of how he wants this vision to look? He's a lot more familiar with the 49er style of defense, with the systems of the past that have operated at a high level for this team. And bringing in Brandon Staley as somebody that can view it from the press box and give some strategy and some tips and some tricks, I think certainly will help add a little bit of a flair onto this defense that is much needed, because I feel like the defense has kind of become exhausted, not from a personnel standpoint, but from a schematic standpoint. They've almost become stale. So now bringing in a little bit of a fresh face, a little bit of a different view might also help them as well. So a new coordinator with something to prove and an extra assistant that should help, who's a former head coach. The offense we know is going to be elite, one of the best in football. And there's argument that Brock Purdy and the offensive line could both be better this year. Brock Purdy's entering year 3 with a full offseason for the first time in his career with Kyle Shanahan and some of his weaponry to work with, like Deebo Samuel and George Kittle in practices. He hasn't been able to work with Ayuk or McCaffrey very much, but it is what it is. And then the offensive line, right? Dominic Pooney looks like a pretty good rookie addition who could start right away for this offensive line. Trent Williams should be back, from that holdout, the contract negotiation soon enough, and he's still Trent Williams, so I'm not too worried. And Colton McKivitz enters year 2 as a starting full-time player, which should also be pretty big for him. So looking at the entire offense, they have probably the best receiving options in football, from Deebo to Ayuk to Kittle to Ricky Pearsall in the first round, Jawan Jennings third and Jawan, and you've got Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason, Elijah Mitchell, a depth of talent that is out of this world, and a defense that has a strong pass rush, that has good linebackers, that drafted well, I feel like, with Green, Mustafa, younger players like Winter stepping up, and even some savvy veteran pickups for the secondary. I think that could improve the corner position and not have such an exposable perimeter corner number 2 like Ambry Thomas, who started a lot of the games last year, and that became one of their most, kind of critical positions at the end of the year, where teams were just targeting the number 2 corner or the slot corner, depending on where Lenore was lined up. So if you just have one more reliable corner on the team, that's going to make this defense that much better and elevate that much more. If they can just figure out their run techniques a little bit more, their formations, their personnel a little bit better in terms of how to stop that run that was exposing them in the playoffs, this should turn around to becoming once again a top 3, top 4 defense in football with a top 3 offense without a doubt in football. So the Niners are the best team in this division. They could win the Super Bowl this year. I'm not believing in a Super Bowl hangover because there's really nothing to say that they should have a hangover other than maybe a schedule that has them facing a lot of difficult time zone situations and also, travel situations. But outside of that, I don't think there's anything football-wise that makes you say this team won't win their division. Next, we've got who will win the West. I'm going to keep this one pretty brief for you guys. I still want to go through each team, but it's obviously the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll get to that in a second, but let's just explain why the other teams won't win the division. So the Denver Broncos, they have a rookie quarterback. They have not enough weaponry, in my opinion, outside of really Cortland Sutton. I don't think anybody is reliable entering this season. Greg Dulcich has talent, but he's often injured. Javonte Williams is coming off the worst season of his career. He could be a nice running back at his best, but he hasn't shown that in a couple years. The offensive line did lose their center, who was graded as a top 10 center in football, and Sean Payton isn't the same coach he was 15 years ago. That's just a fact. On top of that, I would also say that the defense is just not talented enough either. There's nothing about this team that makes you suggest that they can carry a rookie quarterback. Their pass rush isn't really good enough. Their secondary isn't really good enough. They don't have elite players on defense that can shut people down. They have a fine defense that's schematically pretty fun, but I don't really view them as a team that can make a run at the playoffs or make a run at this division. I think that the underrated area of their roster is probably their pass rush. I like the 3 or 4 edge players that they do have on their team. I think their interior defensive line, adding John Franklin Myers alongside Zach Allen, is a pretty interesting shout, but I don't view anything about this team. Bo Nix should give excitement to the fan base if he plays well, but this is more of a 2, 3, 4 year type of solution to me. This is the Chiefs division to lose, right? Then you've got the Raiders, who have a very fun defense and I think a very good defense. You add Christian Wilkins to it, you add another elite player to the D-line, that makes them extremely promising up front. Jack Jones, Nate Hobbs, guys like that in the back end are going to hold it down, and I really love Robert Spillane in the middle, so I think their defense will be flirting with the top 10 once again this year. Their offense is a complete wild card in terms of quarterback play, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, which is why you probably are not going to pick them to win the division. You're probably not going to pick them to make the playoffs, despite having a roster that if it had a Joe Burrow or a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen, they would probably make the playoffs without question with Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. They have enough weaponry to work with. The O-line has plenty of talent, but it needs to come together from a cohesion and coaching standpoint. Zamir White has promising moments as a running back already. Can he put that together as their starter? We'll see. But I like the Raiders overall as a roster. I just don't really believe they have the quarterback to win double-digit games in an NFL season right now. But I could see them surprising some people. The Chargers, I think they've got the quarterback and the coach, but they don't have much else. They need their pass rush to stay healthy with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. They need their safeties like Derwin James and Gilman to stay healthy. They need this defense to rise and play a lot better for them to be competitive, because I don't think they're going to be able to win shootouts with the receiving core they have. As much as I like Josh Palmer, they do have good tackles. They should be able to run the ball decently well with Greg Roman's scheme and an improved offensive line. But honestly, like, Herbert's already injured. It's just bad vibes. This team isn't talented enough for me to believe in them. So yeah, like, this is easily the Kansas City Chiefs division. It's not that close. Mahomes is by far the best quarterback in this division, even with Herbert there. And I like Herbert, but I mean, the difference between the best quarterback and like the 6th or 7th best quarterback is a pretty big difference, in my opinion. So, and then you look at the offensive line in the interior, and it's very strong. I like the addition of Worthy a ton. I think that brings a different dimension to this offense that they were missing last year, and he appears to already have rapport with Mahomes and the ability to run routes and separate. That's going to be scary. I think Rashee Rice has a huge year. Travis Kelce, I think he'll just hold on until the playoffs, and then he'll start to go off as he typically does. But I think his regular season will be relatively quiet because I don't think they'll need him as much. They'll rely on Pacheco. They'll rely on the other playmakers to get them through a lot of games until the fourth quarter, when Kelce will probably convert some third downs and things like that and come through in the clutch. The defense should be very, very good. You do wonder if their secondary will be the same elite dominant unit that allowed them to play the way they did last year and win the Super Bowl without L'Jarius Sneed, but they still should be very good on defense. They are, Omenihu will come back at some point. Defensive tackle, I think, is a little thin. Linebackers are very good. Safeties are very solid. I especially love Justin Reed, but I don't think they're amazing. I think this is more about the coaching's awesome. The quarterback's awesome. They've got a few players across the roster that are arguably the best at their position. Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, Creed Humphrey, etc. So that puts them in the conversation for a three-peat, but it's going to be very challenging. Very challenging. Next up, we've got the NFC South. The NFC South, I think, is a really interesting division because I think all four of these teams, reasonably, you could make an argument, could win the division, which makes it one of the more exciting ones this year. I think at the bottom, most people view the Carolina Panthers, but I think there's a fair argument that they could be better than a team like New Orleans this year. Carolina should have a better offensive line than New Orleans. Carolina could arguably, at the end of the day, have a better receiving core, have, a competitive defense with a solid running game. They might be able to run the ball better than the Saints. And honestly, with Bryce Young entering year 2, who knows the ceiling that he might have? I thought he was terrible as a rookie, but it is year 2 with a new coach. We'll see how things evolve and change. I think Carolina is still going through a rebuild. They still need plenty of elite players on defense, at corner, at edge rusher, pass rush in general to help them out in the future. But I think at least they added to the offensive line to protect Bryce. This year is all about Bryce and getting the most out of that quarterback. And Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette, that should certainly help him. Hunt, Lewis, that should certainly help him. I think Carolina's near the bottom, but you can make an argument they might be the third best because the Saints, I'm really scared about the current vibes about this team, just in terms of the offensive line is in shambles. I don't think they're going to have much of a running game. I think you could make an argument that they might have the worst running game in football this year. Alvin Kamara has just been very inconsistent and very inefficient running the football, and Jamal Williams is not much better, and the offensive line issues could really make them struggle and be one-dimensional, which with a bad pass blocking line and Derek Carr, that's going to be a little bit scary. Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, I think some underrated combination in football. Jawan Johnson, we'll see if he takes a step forward this year. Perry's interesting. The defense, I think, is very solid, if not good, right? I think that Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu, Cameron Jordan will lead the way in terms of veteran presences. I like the addition. I don't think Chase Young's a bad addition at all. I feel like, Carl Granderson's a good player. I like the addition of Willie Gay. I feel like Werner he's still there, so they got good linebackers. They got 3 of them that can really play. I think the corner position, they could have one of the best corner duos on the perimeter in football with Adebo and Lattimore. So I think their defense is going to have to win them a lot of games for them to survive and compete for this division. So I just ultimately don't see it with the makeup of their offense and the stale nature of Derek Carr. Then you look at Tampa Bay, who, yeah, Baker Mayfield had a great year last year, but he's probably due for regression. The amount of success this team had on third down is just unlikely, and I know that that's how the Tom Brady teams operated as well, but that's Tom Brady. That's not Baker Mayfield. The offensive line could be better. The center is, a huge improvement from the draft. Graham Barton, I'm really excited for him. Tristan Wirfs and Gedeke, he's actually evolved into a good player, but Tristan Wirfs is an amazing player. And I feel like their pass protection will be solid. Their run game is really the X factor. Can Rachaad White take a step forward as a runner? Can maybe Bucky Irving, really provide a spark or something? But Chris Godwin, McMillan, and Evans is a really interesting receiving core along with Palmer. Otten as well. So they've got plenty of guys to throw the ball to here. And if McMillan could really be a breakout rookie type of player, this could be one of the most dynamic receiving cores in football, which could put them in the conversation for the division. Absolutely. Baker's also the best healthy quarterback entering the season. So that's also pretty interesting to me. Defensively, I think that they're always good against the run, and they're always really elaborate, and They have their specific Todd Bowles style, which is pack it against the run, which is blitz a lot, which is throw a lot of, elaborate zone blitz and pressures and schemes, at the quarterback position. I like Antoine Winfield. I love that they brought back Jordan Whitehead. I'm worried about corner a little bit with them, but I think Thomas was a nice addition. We'll see, what happens with McCollum if he can step forward and play that perimeter spot. The D-line, I wish they had a better pass rush, honestly. Like, I wish they had more there. I don't think they'll miss Devin White. I don't think they'll miss Shaq Barrett all that much. Diaby is a big X factor for them. Kalijah Cansey's a big X factor for them. Vita Vea, he's still there. They've got plenty of good players here, a very deep interior defensive line. I think they're going to be flirting with a wild card spot, but I do think that there's regression due for Baker. There's regression due for the offense. Dave Canales left. They also got a little fortunate in some of their games last year. I would also say that their schedule is much more difficult this year, which probably results in them not winning the division, but being pretty competitive and close. So ultimately, my pick to win the division is the Atlanta Falcons. I am determining the Falcons as the winner after they added Matt Judon and Justin Simmons. Before that, I was not sold on this defense. I was not sold on this team. I did not think they had a shot because I didn't think they had a defense, honestly. So, yeah, I think Kirk Cousins, from what I've seen in camp and what I've seen in highlights and clips, that he looks good enough for me to buy in week one. I think Bijan's about to have a special running back season that you should be drafting in fantasy. I think Darnell Mooney is a slept-on wide receiver 2 addition. Hopefully Kyle Pitts can play the best season of his career since at least his rookie season, if not his best of his career overall. The O-line's good, and I have confidence there. I think that the Sean McVay-esque offensive scheme is going to be a lot of fun to watch with play action and run game for Kirk Cousins that fits him and suits him very well from all the locations he's been. Kevin O'Connell, similar type of scheme. Washington, where he was successful, right? So that with Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. So it makes sense that would work. Also, Drake London could have a huge year this year as well. I am a little bit worried about their receiving core in terms of depth. I am a little bit worried about still aspects of the defense, but I think that they have enough veterans up front like David Onyemata, Grady Jarrett to complement Matt Judon. I don't think that Ebiketie is a bad player either, or Carter as like a third edge rotation linebacker type. I think their linebackers are actually very underrated in Ellis, Landman, and Anderson, all athletic, all different, some of them are blitzers, some of them are coverage guys, so I like the combination there. And Terrell with Bates and Simmons should hold it down in the back end, even if they're a bit limited and weak at the other corner positions. So the Falcons just feel like the most talented, complete team with the best overall offense. I think Raheem Morris will do a solid job with the defense and allow them to complement their offense very well. I think Cousins is a veteran who's accurate, who knows how to get rid of the ball, who knows how to operate in this style of offense. I think he'll be ready to go. I think he'll be ready to elevate this franchise, ready to allow them to rise up to the playoffs. So division winner is the Falcons. Now we have the AFC South. This one's interesting to me because I think all 4 of these teams have extreme potential this year. It's just a matter of which ones will hit it. I think that the Colts, to me, are appearing to be the most suspect team that I've seen this offseason, mostly because Anthony Richardson doesn't appear to be ready to be a good quarterback in the NFL. Maybe he'll be average, maybe he'll be bad but exciting, almost Justin Fields-esque in the past. That could be possible. But that doesn't win you a lot of games, right? So the offensive line is very good. Jonathan Taylor is very good. Michael Pittman is a good player. Josh Downs, if healthy, is a good player. Mitchell is showing out big time in some camp stuff and also scored a touchdown in the recent preseason game. So I like the confidence in the receiving core there. The tight end position's kind of a mess right now. The defense is really good up front. I think they've got good linebackers as well as good defensive line. I would say that Epicam really hurts, but I think Latu Latu is going to have a huge rookie season. DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, awesome D-tackle duo. They brought in Davis from Miami, I believe it is, and they also, have Kwity Paye still. Hopefully he can have another step forward this year. Speed, Franklin are good linebackers. Blackman's a good safety. Moore is good in the nickel spot. What do they get out of the perimeter corners is pretty interesting, right? Guys like Juju Brents, we'll see if they can step up and elevate this unit. I'm not a Gus Bradley guy. I am a Shane Steichen guy. I just feel like their pass defense and pass offense is going to be too limited for my conversion to a fan of this team. Then you look at Tennessee. Tennessee has equal questions, if not more. They're a new coaching staff completely on offense and defense. I think they're first-time play callers on offense and defense, if I'm not mistaken. The offensive line coach, being the father of Callahan, I think will significantly help them develop their offense this year. I think that adding a first-round pick at left tackle is never a bad idea, along with Skoronski entering year 2 as a first-round pick himself. Also, adding Cushenberry from Denver, who I already discussed, is a big addition. I like the receiving core quite a bit with Ridley, D-Hop when he's healthy, Tyler Boyd, Treylon Burks, Westbrook Akine, Okonkwo. I love the running backs, Spears and Pollard. And Pollard, when he's healthy, we know he's dynamic. The defense, I think, is going to be very hit and miss. I really like the secondary with Snead, McCreary, and Awuzie. I also feel like they brought in Quandre Diggs, right? I like that addition. I think they also brought in Jamal Adams, if I'm not mistaken. That's actually one I predicted. Linebackers, though, are absolutely putrid, probably the worst in football. The edge position is a little like Landry's good, but Key is like more of a third guy than a second guy. And their interior outside of Jeff Simmons is a little bit leaving something to be desired. So I think the Titans have holes. Will Levis has potential, but Will Levis is a wild card. Will Levis is inaccurate. Will Levis has a huge arm. He's a good athlete. I think he's got a great bravado. He's the Mayo man, but I just don't know how much I really truly believe for them to win this division. So they'll be third or fourth in my opinion. I think the two teams fighting for this division will be Jacksonville and also of course, the Houston Texans, who I was taking a minute there to spit out. But Jacksonville, first of all, I think has the quarterback. I think they have the coach. I think they have enough pieces on offense and defense to make a run at this division. I just worry about the offensive line. I worry about the high-end talent of the receiving core. And I also worry about certain areas of the defense, like the depth of the D-line. The secondary overall, I think, is okay, but I don't think it's fantastic. I just view them as not a worse version of Houston, but just being collectively a little bit worse in most areas than Houston. Lawrence, I just watched a little bit of that Atlanta preseason game. He's looking real crisp and real good, like 2022 version. That could put them in the playoff conversation. I wouldn't be shocked if this team won the division, but I also wouldn't be shocked at all. I might even pick them to make the playoffs, but I'm a little bit worried about the O-line still. I don't know if they improved it enough. Brian Thomas is only replacing Calvin Ridley. How much better can that get? Hopefully a little bit, but Gabe Davis I'm not really buying into. Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk's awesome. Travis Etienne's a great player. The defense, I love the Ryan Nielsen addition at D coordinator. I like the Eric Armstead addition. I like, certain things they've done. Andre Sisco could take a step forward. Campbell could take a step forward. Lloyd could take a step forward. There's guys that are young that are still ascending. I just don't think they're quite as good as Houston, which is why I have the Houston Texans winning this division. I've spoken about the Texans at length. You guys can go watch all the other videos, but CJ Stroud's a stud. I think that he elevates his teammates through his leadership and his playmaking. He's an incredible passer from inside, manipulating the pocket, and then also from outside, escaping and buying time. And he really was impressive in that regard as a rookie. His ability to make throws, but not bad decisions on the move was a very high level stuff. The offensive line should be healthier this year, and I think it's solid enough. Laramie Tunzel is obviously the superstar there. But then you look at the receiving staff, and it's just out of this world, really fantastic. I mean, you've got Tank Dell, Nico Collins as the X, the Z. You've got, obviously, John Mechie. You've got Stephon Diggs. You've got Noah Brown. You've got all these guys that they can throw the ball to, that they can utilize. Dalton Schultz is a good, talented tight end. I think they still have a secondary tight end that's pretty capable that I can't really think of. Joe Mixon, even Damian Pierce, who looked like a stud as a rookie but had a disappointing year too. There's a lot to like about the running backs, the tight ends, the receivers. They really improved this unit even more so than the explosive unit that they were at their peak last year. When they had Tank Dell and they had Nico Collins, they were a fantastic offense to watch last year, and now they've gotten better at running back. They've gotten better at receiver. Stroud should take a step forward, you would think. And Stroud's not the type of guy, it's not a fluke. It's not going to regress. He's too good. He's too accurate. His mechanics are too sound. He's not going to regress. He's going to be a better player this year, in my opinion. And then defensively, I think they're only going to be better because I think Derek Stingley is really going to shine as a corner. I think that Will Anderson's going to take another step forward. I think the additions of Danielle Hunter being better than Jonathan Grenard, a true superstar sack artist, that's a big deal. Danico Autry being a great number 3 edge when he comes back is a huge deal. I think adding Al Shire and his familiarity with D'Amico Ryans is a huge deal. I think having Jalen Petrie in year 3 is a big deal. I think having, more depth at corner, that is huge. So I think the Texans are a very complete team. They could win the AFC. They could win the whole conference. I am very confident they will win this division in 2024. Next up, we've got the NFC North. The NFC North is really interesting and maybe the toughest to pick in my opinion. And honestly, as much as I think the Bears have potential with Caleb Williams and the young, promising nature of this squad with the receiving core they have, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Roma Dunze, man, the defense looked really good at the end of last year, and I think that Matt Eberflus has belief in this team, and Caleb Williams has all the confidence in the world and seems to have the confidence of his teammates and the confidence of the NFL, really. I feel like the Bears are going to be a lot of fun, and they could make the playoffs, but I just don't see them putting it together for 17 games as consistently as the Packers or as the Lions. I think those two teams are clearly a cut above the rest of the division. I think the last place team is very likely the Vikings. Not only did they lose J.J. McCarthy already, but Sam Darnold, we just don't know how consistent he's going to be. He's going to have moments of promise, moments of flash, but I just don't think it's going to be all that consistent, guys. I really don't. Justin Jefferson's amazing. I don't know what's going on with Jordan Addison. TJ Hawkinson might not be back for a while. Aaron Jones will be there for a minute and then probably be hurt for another. And then the O-line's really good. The coaching staff's really good, right? But there's kind of bad vibes with the Tua thing and the Brian Flores thing. But I still love Brian Flores, don't you worry. But Kevin O'Connell's an amazing head coach. I think Brian Flores is a great defensive coordinator. I love the addition of Stephon Gilmore to help their back end with another veteran like Harrison Smith back there. And, Murphy manning the nickel will be nice. And potentially, or maybe even perimeter, you could have Murphy and Gilmore in the perimeter, have 3 safety looks a lot of the time. I think Ivan Pace is a good player. Blake Cashman helps their speed of their middle linebacker position. Grenard was a youthful addition for Danielle Hunter. I don't know if that's an upgrade. Dallas Turner's also pretty flashy and promising. Phillips is a good underrated player. I like a lot of the things they got. My guy, Van Ginkel, with the hair, Thor out there. So I think they've got a decent roster. It's just a matter of, I don't think they have the quarterback, and I think that's really going to hurt them. We saw this team play without a quarterback last year. It was very up and down. It was a roller coaster. They were pretty much in every game, but they just couldn't really square it up and make it consistent. So we'll see what Darnold is. Maybe they could be a surprise team. But ultimately, it's going to come down to the Packers and the Lions. I think what's the determining factor to me is the depth of the rosters and the certainty of what I'm going to get from both teams. I think that the Packers are honestly the team that I feel like I should be picking to win their division, just based on I need to pick a team to ascend, a young team to ascend to the top of their ranks. And the Texans won their division last year, so that technically doesn't really count. So the Packers feel like the team I should be picking, but I just can't not pick the Lions. And the reason for it is I'm just worried about the Packers' depth in certain areas. I'm worried about their offensive line depth at the tackle position specifically. I'm worried about the defense in terms of their linebacker position, their safety position, their corner position, the injuries that they might sustain throughout the season, the question marks about their defense and their defensive scheme, it could be fantastic. I've been really, really going off about how much I think this defense could be way better this year, given the Halfley scheme and the attacking scheme of their front. I feel like that will really help them, right? But I just can't get over the Lions. They've got more depth in their secondary this year. I think they really helped that. I think their run defense is elite. Their run game is elite. They've got multiple good running backs. What if Josh Jacobs gets hurt? That's a big loss for the Packers, right? So just comparing it, I think we know more about Goff than we do Love, although Love, I think, has more talent and might be better at the end of the day. I don't know if we can prove that, right? The Packers, I love their receiving core, but do they have a guy like Amon-Ra? Do they have a guy like Laporta? I don't necessarily think so. I think the Lions just have more certainty in their bag, right? I love players on the Packers. I think they easily could win this division. I love Matt LaFleur. I think he's a better head coach than Dan Campbell. I really do. But I think that the collection of talent of the coaching staff as well in Detroit is probably more impressive with guys like Ben Johnson on the staff. I think Aaron Glenn is, he has a clear identity in terms of, I think he wants to play more man coverage, be more aggressive, blitz a little bit more, kind of like a Todd Bowles-esque type of vibe or maybe a Saints type of vibe. But I do feel like the Lions are the more complete team just by a little. So that's why I'll ultimately take Detroit. I think that people are forgetting just because the Packers have young, youthful players that are ascending, the Lions do as well. The Lions do as well. Now, they do have older players in certain spots, that, especially that interior offensive line. I continue to bring that up. That age, wear, and tear could bring them down. But honestly, like guys like Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, Brian Branch, Jack Campbell, all these guys, Jamison Williams could have a huge year this year, by the way, as the wide receiver too. There's a reason they didn't really bring anyone else in. I think that these guys could all ascend as well as Christian Watson and all these guys, Quay Walker, all these guys in Green Bay as well, Devontae Wyatt. Those guys could definitely break out, but so could the Lions guys. So that's why I have Detroit. Then you've got the AFC North. The AFC North, man, is really talented from top to bottom, really awesome. I think two teams that I feel like will be good teams, but I just don't feel like have really any shot of winning the division is Cleveland and Pittsburgh. And it basically comes down to quarterback. Like, I could go top to bottom with their rosters and talk about why I love their defenses, their defensive lines, their pass rushes, their secondaries. I think Cleveland has one of the best corner trios in football, if not the best. I think Pittsburgh has the best pass rush in football. I think they both have great coaching staffs on both sides of the ball. Arthur Smith really helps the Steelers. Schwartz really helped the Browns last year, and that could be kind of the Steelers' move this year that really helps them. But, man, like, Deshaun Watson is terrible. He's putrid. He's no good. The offensive line's already a little bit beat up in Cleveland, and they lost their offensive line coach, which is concerning. And Nick Chubb, their heart and soul, is not going to be there for a while. So those things are depressing my thoughts about the Browns. When it comes to I really want to talk about the Texans, apparently. I accidentally pressed that. That's pretty funny. But when it comes to the Steelers, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, neither of them are great. I do think Russell Wilson will be the guy. I do think Russell Wilson will improve from Kenny Pickett. But I think that so much with this schedule that they face, it's going to be really hard for them to even win 9-10 games. It's really going to be difficult, guys. But at the end of the day, the Steelers can make the playoffs. They're probably not going to have a losing record. It's Mike Tomlin. I really believe in George Pickens at this point. I really believe in Pat Freiermuth this year. I think the offensive line is improved, young. I think they're going to ascend. I think they're going to play better because Arthur Smith's good with the offensive line. I like the running backs, especially Jalen Warren. But, man, I just don't see it with these two teams winning this division. So it ultimately comes down to the Ravens or the Bengals, Lamar or Burrow. And that's the difference in this division. If the Steelers had Lamar, they'd win this division. If the Browns had Burrow, they'd win this division, right? But it ultimately comes down to quarterbacks in the NFL. Even, I like their coaches too, but like, to me, it becomes a battle between those two. And the Bengals won the division in 2021 and 2022. Now, some of that did have to do with Lamar getting injured in some of those seasons, but you could say the same thing about the Bengals not winning the division last year because Burrow was injured, right? So, and they still went 9-8 with the injured Joe Burrow. The Ravens, to me, just clearly have more signs of regression, and the Bengals clearly have more signs of progress because their schedule is much easier. Burrow should be healthy. The O-line is improved. The secondary is improved. The team has great cohesion, chemistry, and motivation. And all those things is the reasons I'm buying into Cincinnati and not Baltimore to win this division, because Cincinnati, at the end of the day, is a deeper, better receiving core, a more high octane, better passing attack. I think their defense is well calculated, well schemed, and I think that the Ravens are really going to miss their defensive coaches. They lost 3 defensive coaches, including Mike Macdonald, which I think is going to take the defense a level down than what they were, despite some of the talents they have, like Kyle Hamilton and Roquan Smith and Justin Madubuike and Marlon Humphrey, and I could go on. I love Lamar. He's a great player, and I think that Mark Andrews, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers going to have a huge year. I love those players, but I think there's more questions about the Ravens up front on the offensive line, more questions with their pass rush. I think there's questions about the coaching. I think there's questions about the schedule, first place schedule, being the number 1 seed last year, more pressure, Lamar staying healthy compared to, because he was healthy last year. So it's almost a flip in health for Burrow and Lamar. So there's just more things that signal the Bengals are going to win this division. Then we've got the AFC East, and the AFC East, man, is really tricky and really interesting. I think there's 3 teams that can win this division. I'm sorry, Patriots fans, but honestly, I don't even really need to discuss us in this video. There is almost no way the Patriots win this division. They have a rookie quarterback who's largely going to play a majority of the year, and they have a rookie coach in Gerard Mayo. They just are not ready yet. They need a season to progress, to find out what works, to build this team, build this roster. They probably need another high draft pick to really get this thing rolling. But honestly, the Jets are not going to have a very long window with Aaron Rodgers. The Dolphins seemingly are coming to the end of their window, and the Bills do have Josh Allen, so they'll be around. But the Patriots, I think, will be on the rise in coming seasons, just not this year. So let's remove them. The Miami Dolphins, I'm worried about their offensive line. I'm worried about their pass rush. I'm worried about Tua's health. I'm worried about the age of their roster and how that affects their injuries. I'm also worried about the weird vibes of their defense and the egos and the arrogance of the whole Vic Fangio situation that hasn't been discussed. So I'm going to eliminate them. Then it comes down to the Bills and it comes down to the Jets. The Jets have the better defense. The Jets have the better roster, but the Bills are a more cohesive team. They've got more chemistry. They've got better coaching, and they've got the better quarterback. So at the end of the day, I just think there's more to rely on when it comes to the Buffalo Bills. They have Josh Allen. They have number 17, one of the best in the game, if not at any point in any week, the best in the game. They have a really good offensive line. Deion Dawkins highlights the unit. I think Spencer Brown continues to improve. Watch out for him, as well as Osiris Torrance. I really love James Cook. I really love Dalton Kincaid. The other thing I'd say about the Bills is they have young players on offense that should ascend. Dalton Kincaid, James Cook, Khalil Shakir. These are the guys that I'd look out for in 2024. The defense, I think, is deep at all 3 levels. I do think they'll miss Matt Milano. I don't think they're dominant in terms of their personnel, but they're well schemed, and they've got a lot of depth and a lot of different players like Gregory Rousseau, Ed Oliver, Rasul Douglas, Teron Johnson. I think the safeties, they've got a combination of 3, 4, 5 guys that should find a role within the safety, combination. Look out for Taylor Rapp. I'm a big fan of him, always have been. Terrell Bernard is pretty intriguing to me. Somebody like AJ Epinesa could take a step forward. Von Miller, the X factor. But I think the Bills will win this division at the end of the day. I like the Jets. I love their defense, but Hassan Reddick questions. I don't like Robert Saleh. I don't like Hackett. Rodgers is older and did not look great in 2022. So there's enough questions about the Jets, despite me thinking they'll probably make the playoffs. And I like Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, the defense, Sauce Gardner. The O-line's improved. Yes, but the Bills are just more trustworthy. And when it comes to the NFC East, I think this is pretty easily a 2-team division. It's the Eagles or it's the Cowboys. It's the Cowboys or it's the Eagles. And you can take your pick based on which team you think is better. The Commanders and the Giants are no good. And honestly, Jayden Daniels is a rookie. Daniel Jones, he might lose his job. Both offensive lines are bad. The defenses have interesting aspects to them, like the Commanders. I think Dan Quinn will bring a flair and a style to them that will be interesting. I think the linebackers are good. Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne are good. I think the Giants have a good pass rush potentially with Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence that could ruin games, but I don't really believe in their secondary. So ultimately, it's Cowboys or Eagles, and at the end of the day, I like the Eagles here. I think the Cowboys have done some things recently to make me really believe in them with the pass rush and the defensive line, adding a couple nose tackles to help their run defense, to help out the new scheme change from somebody like Quinn to Zimmer. I think that the secondary, getting Trayvon Diggs back, is a huge addition that people aren't discussing. What's going on with CeeDee Lamb? Who's playing running back? Is it Rico Dowdle? Because it shouldn't be Zeke. Jake Ferguson, I like. Brandon Cooks is getting older, and it seems like injuries are already bugging him so far this year. Jalen Tolbert, can he take a step forward? What's the O-line going to be like, especially at left tackle? Cooper Beebe is interesting. Dak's really good, but he's coming off the best season of his career, so will he regress? The Eagles are just a more talented team. They've got more pieces together. Hurts is a good quarterback and a good leader. I like their coordinators now in Fangio and Moore, which was one of their bigger questions last year and one of the biggest, points of emphasis that they needed to address, and they did it. I still hate Sirianni, but it is what it is. I like the Jahan Dotson, signing to be able to go with A.J. Brown and to be able to go with, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley. They have so much skill talent. They still have a top 3 offensive line. The Cowboys, they have a questionable offensive line. The Eagles have a top 3 offensive line. The pass rush of the Eagles is maybe not as good as the Cowboys, but it's still really good. And they do appear to be faster, more schematically sound on the back end. They have young players that I think will be good. Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell. I like Avonte Maddox, how he looked in the preseason. I think he's coming back from injury should help. Guys like that. So Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, he should also help. So I think the Eagles are just better top to bottom, more talent, more depth, better offensive line, more skill talent, just all around. They're just a better team. So yeah, guys, that's it. My division winners for the 2024 NFL season. If you enjoyed, Gronk spike the like button. We'll see you in the next video. Subscribe. Peace.